Hi, I'm Scott Wiseman, and I've spent many years in law enforcement. I also have a young child whose future I care about deeply. I'm here in a teen recreation center that's used to keep kids away from gangs. We'll be seeing more of this center as the video progresses. I'd like to help you figure out whether your children or your community are involved with gangs or are likely to be. To do this, we'll first give you some basic information about gangs, then have you answer a series of questions. And then we'll advise you about what to do if your child is under the influence of gangs. Gangs are a brutal fact of life in most big and medium-sized American cities today. In the last decade, gangs have spread like a cancer throughout the United States. Gang members from groups like the Bloods and the Crips have helped spread this cancer by moving into non-gang communities to start new chapters of their gangs. These gangs thus turned into super gangs, that is, associations of hundreds of neighborhood gangs. Other super gangs like the Latin Kings, Miami Boys, and the Jamaican Posse spread in a similar way, so that they could make more and more money dealing drugs, stealing cars, and the like. These numbers from the FBI show how many gang members are affiliated with each of these main super gangs, sometimes called corporate drug gangs. Super gangs have been going into suburban and rural communities to create new gangs, or sets as gang members often call them, franchises if you will, to sell drugs in traditionally middle-class areas. Super gangs are successful at penetrating the suburbs for a variety of reasons. First, two career suburban parents, like many inner-city parents, often aren't able to give their kids the time and attention they need. And second, because of the economy, more and more suburban kids feel hopeless about their future. Many inner-city kids have felt this way for years. So, whether you live in an urban, suburban, or even rural area, you should worry about the threat gangs pose to your children. There's no surefire place to go these days to escape the reach of gangs. Today's gangs are not only sophisticated about setting up drug outlets or franchises in the suburbs, but as TV reports have made painfully clear, their repertoire includes the use of guns, highly sophisticated automatic weapons, drive-by shootings, witness intimidation, extortion, auto theft, robbery, and murder. What about gender and age concerns? Don't assume that only boys are at risk. From 5 to 10% of all gang members are female. All girl gangs are no longer the novelty they once were, and the girls who hang with the mixed gangs are keeping up with the boys in committing crimes. While girls in mixed gangs carry weapons and contribute more equally today, they still seem to be exploited as sex objects. If she isn't required to be a toss-up, sexually accessible to all members, she still may have to roll the dice to determine how many she has to sleep with, or walk the rank, have sex with all high-ranking members. Don't assume that you needn't worry about your grade school youngsters. Gangs are recruiting children as young as 6 and 7 these days, first and second graders. Still, 8th grade is the time when kids are the most vulnerable to gang influence. Watch out for friends of your older children who may be recruiting your younger kids. 7 to 12-year-olds, called peewees, often serve as gun bearers and lookouts to watch out for the police during crimes. These peewees frequently work their way up to be associates, and finally, hardcore gang members. There are other designations and initials used too. For example, peewees are also called baby gangsters, and associates, junior gangsters. The average gang member in the U.S. is 17 years old, but this figure is a bit high because of all the older members in their late 20s and early 30s who lead or head up many gangs now. Gangs are still primarily a teenage phenomena. There are many reasons a kid joins a gang. Some of the common ones are boredom, adventure, and its opposite, security, especially if others are hassling him, teenage rebellion, and the urge to belong to a group if one's family is non-supportive or dysfunctional. Gang life holds many dangers, and it is literally a dead end for many. As a parent, you know what kids don't know, that gang involvement has profound, often irreversible effects on their lives. They may have no idea what they're getting into. But the good news is that you can prevent your kids from joining a gang. You can teach them how to respond to recruitment overtures, how to deal with the intense pressure to join, how to opt not to join, and finally, to continue to say no. And research shows that even if your kid is already in a gang, you can help him leave it. Extracting a child from a gang is a substantial challenge, but the benefits to the child, to you, and to your community are incalculable. Before you start looking for evidence that your child belongs to a gang, a word or two about your right to do this. First, because much gang activity is illegal, you have the right to look for evidence, even in your child's room or among his or her private effects. Second, as long as your child lives under your roof, you have the right to demand the child be gang-free and enforce this demand. And third, studies show that even though gang members may try to hide their involvement from their families, most really want their parents to intervene. They even wish their parents would take drastic action to help prevent or reverse their gang involvement. So, while they may not realize their life is in danger, don't be surprised if they cite your opposition to their homies as an excuse to stay out or get out of the gang. To help you decide whether your kids are involved or are likely to become involved with gangs, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Now I'll guide you through the first group of questions. Does your child have or carry a concealable gun or knife? Or something like this pen, which is actually a stiletto knife. How about a homemade weapon, like these nunchucks? Or an illegal butterfly knife like this one. Has your child come home with bruises or injuries he couldn't convincingly explain? He may have been beaten in, that is, initiated into the gang by submitting for 15 or 20 minutes to punches and blows, often with bats, from other clique members. Does your child suddenly and inexplicably have lots of extra money or expensive possessions, like fancy jewelry, gold rings on all his fingers? He could be getting money from gang-related drug activity, pimping, or extortion. By all means, do not excuse unexplained extra income just because it's been put to good use. For example, to pay car insurance, to pay rent, to buy gifts for people. Does she have friends or relatives who are gang members with whom she hangs out? Do you live in or near a gang-infested neighborhood? One sign would be the presence of gang graffiti. Another sign would be news reports of gangs. In a gang-active hood, your child may be forced to join a gang just for protection and for the right to walk to and from your home. Does your child have gang-style tattoos? The gang determines what the design is and where the tattoo is worn on the body, torso, shoulder, hand, or neck, for example. Tattoos are not pertinent if your child is African American because tattoos are not part of the black gang subculture. Is your child starting to have frequent run-ins with teachers, coaches, or the police? You should be notified of any contacts with police, especially if your child was detained and processed by either the juvenile or adult court system. He would likely have come in contact with gang members in juvenile hall or in jail. Is your child abusing alcohol or using illegal drugs? If you answered yes to 3 or more of these 8 questions, you should seriously suspect gang involvement. The next series of questions deal with less serious, yet still important signs and hints of gang involvement. Does your child use a beeper, a police scanner, or a cellular phone? Does he own a bulletproof vest? Of course, if he uses electronic gear to monitor a health condition or stay in touch with you, well, that's okay. Does he use gang terms like set for his friends or neighborhood? Does he have a gang name or alias like Death Snake, Big Dan, Hellfire, Little Smurf, Twin, Nacho, Viper, Mad Dog, Clown, Loco, or Baby Chico? Is he making poor progress in school, getting lousy grades? Is she late to school? Does she cut classes? Is she dropping out? This could be happening because of gang pressures to downplay studies or quit school. Gang values don't jive with school values. Is your child sullen or resentful of your authority? This is significant, especially if this behavior represents a personality change and happens suddenly. Has he changed his friends abruptly? Gangs usually pressure a new member to drop his old friends and withdraw from family. Is he spending more and more time away from home? Gangs often require members to spend many hours on gang activities. If you answered yes to 3 or more of the questions in this checklist, you should be concerned. By the way, you may have answered yes several times because your child is a wannabe, a would-be gang member, or an apprentice. But the pretense of being in a gang can be as dangerous as actually being in one. If she or he walks, talks, and looks like a gang member, then she or he probably is a gang member and should be treated as one. Does your child know and use gang hand signs? Be alert to your son or daughter practicing or using gang hand signs. Flashing signs, as shown here, is called representing. Signs are a way that gang members signal who they are to others when they're not wearing their colors, their gang clothing. Signs help youths decide whether a stranger in their neighborhood is friend or foe. Also, signs give members the same feeling of exclusiveness that handshakes and secret codes give young children who set up a club. Does your child know and use gang symbols, art insignias, slogans, prayers, for example? Are there artistic renderings or slogans written on his school binder? Look for gang symbols or artwork on your children's wallet, purse, CDs, cassette tapes. Also check for symbols and symbolic art on clothes like the sweatshirt, and especially on baseball caps. Now, look for graffiti, that somewhat stylish writing. Does your child have graffiti on some of his personal effects, a backpack, or school papers? By the way, when the letter B is missing from true gang graffiti, it means that the gang is identified with the Crips super gang. The Crips hate the Bloods and try not to use Bs. The C's are missing. The gang identifies with the Bloods and omits C's, which stand for Crips. Your child may be writing graffiti, but not be a gang member. Maybe 90% of the graffiti seen in LA is by non-gang kids. Here are some used-up spray cans, the tagger's key tool, along with giant marker pens. Often, non-gang graffiti is unreadable because of its two main characteristics. It's decorative, and it's usually done in cursive, not printed letters. Can you tell which is the non-gang graffiti? It's the one that is stylistic, almost scribbled, and therefore more difficult to read. Sometimes, kids called tag artists just want to show off their artistic ability with a spray can. Some kids tag to engage in youthful rebellion, some to vent antisocial feelings, and some to just do something daring. However, tagging can lead to gang involvement, and tagging is against the law. Parents are held liable in many jurisdictions for the cost of cleaning up their children's graffiti. Insist that your children stop tagging. Does your child wear gang attire, especially in restricted colors? Or non-colors, like these all white and all black outfits? Most gangsters, except members of certain Asian gangs, wear their colors as often as they can. Some gang clothing and gear changes over time. Also, there are local as well as regional differences. For specifics, you may have to pay attention to the gang fads and fashions in your own area at any particular time. As a guideline, here are some basics of gang colors. Gang attire is like a uniform. There's restricted choice in clothing and colors. For example, gangs that identify with the Crips, the super gang that originated in LA, wear blue and avoid red, the color of their rival super gang, the Bloods. Another example, Latino gangs, who identify with the Nuestra Familia, a longtime prison gang, tend to wear red and call themselves Northerners, Norte, Norteños, or 14s. Their rivals claim the color blue, identify themselves with another prison gang, the Mexican Mafia, and call themselves Southerners, Sur, Serenos, or 13. A key item in many gangsters' attire is the bandana, which is typically carried in a pocket, like a handkerchief, or wrapped around the head and called a do-rag. Showing the right color bandana is absolutely essential. Correct colors must also be worn in certain accessories, such as shoelaces, caps, and even fingernail polish for female gang members. Your child may wear gang attire only to be making a fashion statement, or to be trendy. Advise avoiding gang attire for his or her own safety. A person wearing certain colors could be mistakenly identified and assaulted, or robbed, or even gunned down in a drive-by shooting. Go through your children's clothes and accessories and look carefully for the following. Note how many, if any, of these items your kids have. This mother will find lots of gang stuff in her son's room. We've added many items for illustrative purposes. Here she finds a Raiders jacket. It's a football starter jacket. Starter is a brand name. Look for an S somewhere. Besides starter brand name jackets for different pro teams, derby jackets and troop jackets are also worn by gangsters. Also, pro team, baseball caps, brim hats, knit caps, watch caps, and golf caps, and even Civil War hats. Anything that can conceal a weapon. Be sure to check for Old English lettering on clothing, especially baseball caps. These pants are popular gang khakis. They are called Dickies. Gangsters call these jumbo jeans. And these other jeans, these other blue jeans, counties, because county inmates wear them in jail. Kids often wear boxer shorts, exposed 4 or so inches because of their low-slung pants. If they do wear belts, they have initials or possibly charms on them. In the inside of pocket linings, are often colored appropriate gang colors such as red or blue. Shirts are buttoned only at the top so a gang member can quickly reach inside for a concealed weapon. These Pendleton type shirt jackets are very popular. Here are popular gang shirts, Ben Davis shirts, and oversized t-shirts. Shoes have been important to gang members ever since the tennis shoe became a trendy item. Many gangs choose standard shoes, but even they aren't cheap. Corduroy slippers are also popular. Shoelace colors are also important, even if used for rollerblades. Laces are often tied on the side, not the usual across the middle. We haven't covered white hate group gangs in this video because information about these groups is more widely known. That is, most people are aware of the symbols, clothing, and goals of skinhead and neo-Nazi youth gangs. Iron crosses, swastikas, battle fatigues, and Doc Martens steel-toed boots. And braces, suspenders. Stoner and punk gangs, incidentally, sport mohawks, unevenly shaved heads or dyed hair, and their clothing and accessories include chains, black clothes, and torn jeans, and t-shirts with drug imagery. They tend not to be violent like skinhead and neo-Nazi gangs. If you go through your daughter's room, look for a lot of the same baggy clothes you checked for in your son's room. You might find extremely tight and revealing clothes too. These are leotards. They're often worn with form-fitting leggings with lace at the ankles. Gang girls also love these skimpy tank tops, and there's net blouses. Earrings are usually worn singly. These are door knockers because they're so big. Again, whether they're worn on the right or left side varies by the gang and by its location. Many gangsters prefer sunglasses like these. Jelly bracelets, worn like this, are common. Other popular items are necklaces like this and friendship beads. The following checklist has to do with social and psychological factors that make your child susceptible to gang recruitment. Research shows that these factors lead to juvenile delinquency. You may have to swallow hard to answer some of these questions, but be as honest as you can. Is your child bored because of a lack of hobbies, interests, or leisure time activities? Does your child have trouble getting along with family members? Is your child exposed to constant quarreling and fighting among adults? Is your child in a home torn by various kinds of dysfunction, such as physical or sexual abuse, alcohol or other drug abuse, or mental illness? Do you or any other parents or guardians spend enough quality time with your child in a typical day? Are there relatively few adults in your child's life who are positive role models? Is your child constantly resentful about his or her lot in life? Does he or she constantly crave attention or act out to get it? This may be a sign of low self-esteem. Is your child a bully, intimidating to peers, to you? Is he or she inclined to racist thinking or the belief that one ethnic, cultural, or economic group is superior to another? Does your child desire too much privacy? Have something to hide? Has your child had few or no friends over the years? Does he or she seem to be lonely? Does your child often feel left out, uninvolved in the usual activities of his age mates? Is your child unusually hungry to belong, to feel accepted somewhere? Is he or she dependent upon peers for approval and acceptance? Does your child have trouble resisting peer pressure? Does your child feel compelled to participate in the latest fads and trends in clothing, speech, and music preferences? Does he or she just have to have certain material possessions? Is your child living beyond his or her means? And lastly, does your child seem obsessed by music, movies, or video rentals that glorify gang life or violence? If you answered yes to a majority of the questions on any of the 4 checklists, especially the first one, you need to act immediately. If you answered mostly no, consider the following information as part of your gang prevention campaign. Such prevention should start early in your child's life. Realize you can usually get help from your own family and your child's school. In some communities, you may be able to draw on community resources, counselors, social workers, the police, and probation, and district attorney's offices. If you find your child is a gang member, you must tell him or her that the gang activity must come to a halt, and that you will work with him or her to do whatever it takes to get out of the gang. Your child may actually welcome your announcement, because he can use it to stand up to his gang. He can tell his gang, "My parents absolutely forbid me to stay in this gang." Be prepared to help your child continue resisting gang and peer pressure. Tell your child you insist he be gang-free because you love him and because gang activity leads nowhere, is extremely hazardous to his health, and is often deadly. If he needs proof of this, give him some of the facts presented in the first part of this video. Tell your child you're prepared to spend a lot of time with him or her, hearing their needs, complaints, and dreams. Tell him you are ready to help him find the love, respect, status, and sense of belonging, and economic opportunity that the gang currently gives him. Because gangs offer kids some of the supposed high-status things that go with adulthood, for example, money and alcohol, you're going to have to deal with those issues. Regarding money, be sure you're not role modeling or exhibiting excessive materialism. Then start a campaign to work on your child's values concerning money. Explain that lasting self-esteem rarely comes from material things. Driving a fancy car, wearing expensive clothes and jewelry, and flashing rolls of money aren't worth breaking the law for, aren't worth stealing, robbing, and drug dealing for. And even if these material things did last, they simply aren't worth dying for at an early age. Watch for large amounts of money, stolen property, and the like. Threaten to notify the police and do so if it seems appropriate. Inform your child, if he's legally an adult, which is 18 in most states, that police and court records cannot be erased. A record may prevent him from getting a good job later in life, and can close other doors as well. In 3 strike you're out states, a first offense increases the chance he'll spend his life behind bars. And keep repeating that you're monitoring him and playing hardball because you love him and care about his future. Regarding alcohol and drugs, help your child get into any of the good public and private programs that educate youth about how to resist the temptations of alcohol and illicit drugs. If you have an underage child and you prefer not to set an example of abstinence from alcohol, remind her from time to time that it's legal for adults to drink when they do it responsibly. Follow up your advice and suggestions with effective monitoring. You might even tell your child you will use a product like the ones you spray into a dresser top, a wallet, or clothing to detect traces of marijuana, hashish, cocaine, and crack. Such a spray doesn't prove your child is using drugs, just the drugs have touched a furniture surface or garment. Be careful about doing this. Maybe a counselor could help you. As always, talk and really communicate with your child, trying to build a trusting and open relationship. Be aware that it's sometimes very hard to leave a gang. Your child may stay because he fears the gang will kill him. Some gangs enforce their slogan, blood in, blood out, which means you get brutalized or jumped in when you join, and you get hurt or killed when you try to leave. If you have evidence that blood in, blood out won't be enforced by your child's gang, then tell your child that kids successfully leave gangs every day. Ideally, a kid must decide himself that he wants out, but you can do almost anything you want to help promote and implement this decision. If leaving is truly a problem for your child, call your local law enforcement agency. Ask for the youth or juvenile desk, or the gang suppression unit if there is one. The police can give you good advice, specific to your child's situation. They might even suggest that you consider moving. Moving is a drastic step to take to help your child out of a gang, but sometimes it's the only way. If you determine that it makes sense financially and is workable, then move. Just be sure you move somewhere that doesn't have gangs too. Not an easy thing to do these days. There's something else you can do at home. You can regulate what he or she watches on TV. First, decide if your child overindulges in watching violence on TV or in video rentals. It's a bad sign if he obsessively rents and watches gang movies such as these. If he overindulges or has a tendency to act out, then limit the amount of TV violence he watches. If you aren't home enough to enforce this, arrange to lock the VCR or lock out certain channels. There are various gadgets you can buy to do this. You should also restrict your child's TV viewing if he or she shows signs of acting on other TV messages dealing with sex, drug use, or trendy clothing. Many child development experts advise parents to turn off the TV and talk to your kid. Give each of your kids at least 15 minutes of your undivided attention each day. 30 minutes or more quality time is even better. The same restrictions can be put on popular music that celebrates gang life. Listen to the lyrics of your child's favorite music carefully before taking action. Whether your child is a gang member, flirting with joining a gang, or under the influence of a gang, there are other resources you can make use of. Find out about the various programs your child's school may have to combat gang influence. Be aware, however, that sometimes a school may be contributing to a gang problem. For example, school authorities may be ineffective in dealing with threats and violence occurring at school that cause youngsters to seek safety by joining a gang. If this is the case at your child's school, then consider enlisting the aid of parents' clubs and political groups to get the school board and local government to help rid the campus and immediate vicinity of gangs. While these organizations all know that gangs extort money from students, sell them drugs, bully them, and even confront teachers, these organizations often lack the power or will to banish gangs from schools. At minimum, authorities should arrange to have metal detectors, security personnel who can do hand searches, and gang mediation specialists at gang-troubled schools. Authorities should also consider banning baggy pants, large shirts, and backpacks, which allow gang members to smuggle drugs and weapons onto campus. If you have difficulty restricting your child or want advice on setting limits, teaching accountability, and parenting in general, there are things you can do. Watch TV shows that give parenting tips. Get books out of your local library. Take free parenting courses in your community. You might also want to consider having some therapy sessions with your child or asking for advice from a pastor, priest, or rabbi. Other community resources are available too. Law enforcement agencies often have gang control units that monitor, control, and redirect gang activity. Such units can provide you with information and service, as can some social service outreach workers and community mental health personnel who focus on gangs. And don't overlook public and private community recreational programs. There are music, drama, and crafts programs available in most communities. There are also sports programs. Joining an athletic team and wearing its colors, that is, the uniform, is one of the best alternatives for youth needing what street gangs provide. Baseball, football, soccer, anything. In many cities, midnight basketball, volleyball, and indoor soccer have been especially helpful in luring youths away from gangs and getting them into drug counseling, job training, and high school equivalency programs. Again, try to find out your child's dreams and goals. If they're legitimate and realistic, see if you can provide more direction and guidance to help reach them. Providing direction means helping your youngster get involved in structured activities that offer some of the same goodies as gang life. Point her or him towards participating in organized sports, youth groups, church events, or school groups. Organize family activities. Encourage your child to get part-time work, and most important, summer jobs. Ultimately, you want your child to stay in the best gang there is, your family. And to make this happen, you must offer the love, support, and positive experiences that will make your family infinitely more appealing than any street gang family. Check it out.